Hi City Point Ipswich family, Pastor Lisa and Pastor Simeon here. We just wanted to touch base with you all and say welcome to online church as we know
Crazy.
it at the moment. We love you all and we value you all, and we miss seeing you face to face, but we're really hoping all this online stuff will help you still feel connected to us, to each other, and to the heart of our church.
We really are just trying our best to work out how we're going to connect with you through this time, and we look forward to the challenge. No doubt it is a challenge. We are in a better time than ever to be able to connect with you. With the amount of social media platforms that are available to us, with emails, with phone calls, text messaging, FaceTime, there is nothing that we will do to stop trying to be in contact with you. So please expect to hear from one of us or one of our team over this time. For now, we just really wanted to just try and get on here and say that we love you all, we're praying for you. We most definitely are living in unprecedented times. And I wanted to start by saying that means that in a lot of ways that we are living in days that no one has really walked before. I feel like in a lot of ways it's like the Israelites when they walked into the promised land. They cross over the Jordan River and then their instructions are make camp. So they make camp, and then their instructions are march around the city, and they march around the city, and each day they get up not really knowing what the next day is going to look like. They just know that they needed to trust in God. And we're living in days very similar to that, in that we're waking up each day. We don't know what each day is going to be like because it's changing that quickly. And that means that we need to place our trust in something that's above the systems that are around us. Place our trust in God. In regards to the systems that are around us, can I ask you, please, this is my heart right now, be gracious and be forgiving. The leaders that you're working with, your bosses, your colleagues, your workmates, your friends, your neighbours, us, your pastors, our government, we're all walking in areas that have never been walked in before. And so while it would be great to be able to have a clear pathway, there's just no textbook on this. We're writing the history right now. We're writing the textbook. They'll look back on all the things that we did wrong and go, what were they thinking? They'll look back on all the things we did right and they'll say, wow, that was really smart. And my encouragement to each of us is take a breath, be gracious. We're going to work this out together. And that is part of what I wanted to speak about today is how are we supposed to respond to this as Christians? We've spoken to our kids about this, and part of what I want to say to you, make sure you're clearly talking to your family. Talk to people around you, let them know what's happening, let them know how we're supposed to respond as Christians to all of this. And when I say how we're supposed to respond, there are so many great pastors online right now giving you great advice, great messages, and really what we wanted to share about was even some of what Jesus spoke about in John 17. You may not know this, but Jesus actually prayed for you. I love telling people this because they spin out. They're like, what? Jesus prayed for me? I'm like, yeah, Jesus prayed for you. They're like, what? How? In John 17, Jesus is praying and he makes his statement. He's praying for his disciples at the time, those that were following him, and he says, I pray for those who will believe in me on account of them, as in talking about the disciples, that they may be one just as we are one, that they could be with us. And so the idea that Jesus began to pray for something that we need in this time more than anything, which was unity. Thousands of years ago, when Jesus was praying for you, he prayed for this idea of unity, this idea of connection. And in a moment and in a time where there is so much conversation around isolation, Jesus' prayer for us is around connection. And for us, we want to work out how do we create relationship and connection around isolation. How do we do it when those two things are operating that seem so counterintuitive? You can't have connection and relationship when there's no touch, when there's distance, when there's social isolation, and yet here we are together, and we are going to work out how we do relationship well because it matters. Bible literally says it's not good for us to be alone. And so let me encourage you right now, one of the greatest things that you can do is to connect with others without there being contact. And we can actually make a phone call. We can actually get online and chat to one another.
Text, phone call, email, like the ways of making contact with people, not physical contact, is so much more varied and so much quicker than it was years and years ago.
I think at a time like this, what people want to do more than anything, and I know for us, our heart is that we want to take care of family. The question though is, who is family? If you're a part of City Point Ipswich, we want to let you know really clearly, you're our family.
Yeah.
And so we want to take care of you. And we want to take care of you like you are family. If I look at it biblically about who is family, the story that I'm reminded of is the parable where Jesus talks, this young man comes up to Jesus and he says, okay, what's the greatest commandment? Jesus tells him what the greatest commandment is, which is love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind, right? And then he goes, yeah, that's good. And he goes, but the second one is just like it. He says, love others or love your neighbor as you love yourself. And the man who's asking the question goes, wow, that's really good. But who's your neighbor? Jesus says, oh, I'm glad you asked. And he goes on to tell this parable. It's called the parable of the Good Samaritan. Essentially, what Jesus tells is a story of a guy who goes and he gets robbed, and one guy passes past him who's his countryman. He's on his way to church. There's another guy who passes by another one of his countrymen, a man that's related to this guy potentially. Like it's one of the people that he would maybe even knows him. He just walks on the other side of the street, and so then a complete stranger walks past. He was a Samaritan. The man who was injured was a Jew, and everyone knew that Jews and Samaritans didn't mix together. And so the Samaritan walks past. He stops and he bends down and he helps this guy, picks him up, and he goes and he pays for him to get fully well. And Jesus just asked the question. He just asked the question. They could have said whatever they wanted in this moment, and there's a risk when you ask a question. So he asked the question, who was this man's neighbour in this time? Well, there's only one logical answer, and that was the one who did the caring. When I think about family is not defined by relationship, right? Because there are people right now, you got family, but you've got no relationship with them. So it's not about when I say relationship, I'm talking about your blood relation. There are people right now who have family who there's no connection there. And there are people who have people in their lives who we say, you're just like family to me. You're like an uncle. You're like a second dad. How did they get that status? It was how they loved and cared for them. Right now, what defines our family is not our ability to say, yeah, you're like family. No. It's our ability to love and care for each other. That's what's going to define our family. And love is so critical in this time. Love is not just expressed in our words, even though our words matter. Love is expressed in our actions. We know that because Jesus said, greater love has no one than this, than to lay down a life for a friend. We know that love is important right now because the Bible tells us again in 1 John chapter 4 that perfect love casts out fear. And in a time where fear is natural, it's normal, it makes sense that people are afraid right now. In a time like this, the thing that we need is a love that has an action to it. A love that has a substance to it. A love that makes people go, you're like family to me. You're like a second dad. You're like an uncle. You're like a brother. You're like a sister. And church, that's what I want to encourage you to do right now, is to love your neighbour well. Your physical neighbour, the strangers that are around you. And when we do this, I want to let you know that you express the very character and nature of God. In 1 John 4 again, it says, God is love. Again, in the Bible, Jesus says these words. Jesus himself says this. People will know that you are my disciples. People will know that you're my followers in the way that you love each other. And the Bible tells us to love like God loves. Tells us to love like Jesus loves. And right now, church, our encouragement to you in this time, right now, He said, let's make our family bigger, not smaller. Our nature would be to take care of our immediate family, our blood family. Right now, I want to encourage you, trust in God. Take care of your neighbour. Be willing to share your groceries. As I was prepping for this, right, looking up the story for the Good Samaritan, which is in Luke chapter, Luke 10? Is that where we found it? Yeah, Luke 10. Just a few pages after, right, as I was getting near it, is Luke 12. And again, Jesus tells this parable, right? And the parable is of a man who got all this crop. And he's like, man, I don't have enough room to store all of this stuff, so I need to build bigger barns to store all this stuff. Then I can sit back, and then I can relax, and I can eat and drink and go look at all of what I stored up. The parable goes on to say that basically he dies that night. And in that moment, the conversation or the parable basically says that, you fool, what's the point of storing up all this wealth if you're missing relationship with God? At this time, there's things that we need to do well. We need to have a relationship with God. We need to make sure that is right on point. Yes, go ahead, take care of yourself. Yes, go ahead, take care of your family. Make sure your relationship with God is right, because I believe that when that happens, that when our relationship with God is right, when we have that in the right place, the right way, when we place our trust in Him, like the Israelites did as they marched through that promised land, and we place our trust in Him and we discover His love, from that place we can love others well. From that place we can actually share what we have well. We can actually not just survive this time, but thrive through it. Our prayer for us as a church is that we won't survive the crisis, the coronavirus, but we will thrive through this time. That this will be the time where your love shines brighter, where your family grows bigger, where your relationship with God grows deeper. We love you, church. Be patient with us. We don't know what all these days ahead are going to look like, but we know we're going to do it with you, and we know we're not going to give up. And we know that we're going to make you a part of our family, and we're going to give our very best to you in this whole journey. We're going to be honest with you. There are times where we're going to struggle. There are times where we may not have enough. But as a family, we can do this together. Let's love well through this season. We love you guys. God bless.
See ya.